welcome to another episode of I Demand a Homestead. My name is Amanda, and today what we're going to be talking about is my favorite homesteading books. Okay, we're going to start with my top 5 for beginner homesteaders who really kind of maybe have done a little bit of gardening, done a little bit of stuff, but don't have tons of experience. And then I'm going to have 5 more for more kind of expert or more advanced homesteaders that have been doing this kind of for a while. Okay, and so the first one I'm going to have actually is one that I gave away because it's for beginners, and I looked over this one so many times when I was kind of dreaming of starting growing, and it's called The Backyard Homestead by Carleen Madison. And it really kind of talks about how to set up your property so that you can grow all the food that you need on a quarter of an acre. But it also talks about like what you can do on a much smaller property as well. So that is a great one for someone who's just homestead dreaming. All right, that is a perfect one. In a similar kind of vein, there is another book, and this one's a lot bigger. This one is called The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It. It is by Seymour. He talks about kind of, again, how to set up growing your own food from starting with having like a backyard garden or a community garden all the way to having an acre or 5 acres and kind of how he would lay it out. Also talks about different kind of growing of vegetables, preserving, lots of stuff like that. So also super, super good, that one. This one is Happy Hens and Fresh Eggs, Keeping Chickens in the Kitchen Garden with, I'm going to say this name wrong, Signe Langford. All right. This book I love because not only does it talk about raising chickens and how to kind of look after chickens and what they need, but it also has beautiful recipes that are kind of season specific. Because if you keep chickens, you'll know that when your chickens are out running around in the backyard and they're eating all the weeds and greens, that the eggs are different than what they're like in the wintertime. And there are like beautiful, beautiful recipes in here, from making your own eggnog and mayonnaise, and then pastry, ice cream, you name it. It is in here. It is decadent and beautiful, and these recipes are awesome. The Gentle Art of Preserving. Okay, this one is by Katie and Giancarlo Caldesi. And this, again, it's still for the beginner because it kind of talks about the basics of the different kinds of ways that you can preserve something. So it'll talk about pickling, as well as using sugar to preserve, salt, air, smoke, oil, alcohol, fermenting, heat, and cold. And it goes through and has lots of different nice recipes in here. Beautiful pictures. Just kind of makes you want to try out all this stuff. Indoor Kitchen Gardening. Turn your home into a year-round vegetable garden by Elizabeth Millard. Some of those indoor kitchen or indoor garden books are mostly kind of, they look just like decor, and they don't have a lot of real practical advice. This one really talks about what your setup needs to look like, how to grow microgreens, lettuces, greens, herbs, and the requirements of the different things, and troubleshooting. So, and it's written by an actual like farmer who knows about this stuff, all right? Not an interior designer. Really, really good book. And just for extra fun, as a bonus, I said I knew I was going to do top 5, but I just can't help myself, is Artisanal Small Batch Brewing, Easy Homemade Wines, Beers, Meads, and Cider by Amber Sheehan. Okay? Also, really, really cool. Talks about elderberry wine, chocolate cherry wine, dry hopped cider, rose cider, but these are all small batch. Okay, so a batch of about a gallon or about 4 liters So in wine bottle terms, that's about 5 wine bottles. Okay, so that way, if you don't like the recipe or if it doesn't go well, you haven't invested too much product in that. So that's why this is a really nice one for beginners. And then if you happen to like the recipe and you happen to be more experienced, you can kind of ramp that up to a larger kind of container if you want to. Now, moving on to my top 5 for more experienced homesteaders. Okay, number 1 is The Market Gardener by Jean-Martin Fortier. Okay, this one I got a couple of years ago when I was switching to something called a raised row kind of gardening. If you ever watch the videos on Homesteading Family and a lot of the other kind of homesteading channels, that's what they do. Really tells you exactly how much fertilizer, how much compost, mulching, and then how to space all the different vegetables for your intensive planting. Excellent book. Then a classic, Wild Fermentation by Sandor Katz. This book's been around a long time. If you want to learn how to make kimchi, if you want to learn how to make sourdough, sauerkraut, miso, and these are wild fermentations, right? So this is using the yeast or the fungi that are actually in the air, on the kind of produce, and he kind of really gets into it. Lots and lots of good stuff if you want to get into fermentation as a way to preserve your food, or even just because it helps improve the flavor. And then I've got one for all the fruit growers, because anybody out there who's tried to grow your own fruit knows that it's really frustrating. So this one is called The Holistic Orchard. It's by Michael Phillips. Okay. So he kind of really gets into what you need to do in order to grow your own fruit. Okay. And specifically, the part that I really love about this book is how much detail he puts into pruning. Because that is one thing that all the other books that I've looked at, they just don't talk about in enough detail for me to really understand what I'm supposed to do. But he really gets into that. And so I actually, for the first time, feel like I know how to prune fruit trees properly. All right. He also has another book called The Apple Grower, really more specific to apples. But this one, The Holistic Orchard, is great where it kind of covers everything. And then Dry Curing Pork. Make your own salami, pancetta, coppa, prosciutto, and more. And that's by Hector Kent. All right. When I kind of started my journey with trying to get into preserving meat, I was looking at that earlier book that I had talked about, The Gentle Art of Preserving. And it kind of gives you a lot of general ideas, but this one really gets into the specifics so that you understand how dry curing works. And you don't need recipes anymore, because you can kind of do all the math, the calculation yourself, and then you can kind of use that to help you kind of experiment, and then you're more likely to succeed on your own. Great book for anyone who wants to kind of learn how to cure pork. We use this to cure coppa every year, and it's basically what we use for our deli meat all year long. Okay. Last one, not least, is Root Cellaring, Natural Cold Storage of Fruit and Vegetables by Mike and Nancy Bubel. All right. So this one, if you're really getting serious into homesteading, you're going to need to be able to preserve your harvest, because inevitably you're going to have more than what you can consume at any one time. And I mean, freezing is great, canning is great, drying, whatever. But root cellaring is the way that people have been storing their produce from like the beginning of time, storing it in some place that's cool, whether it's cool and damp or just cool and dry. And it actually is one of the quicker ways to store your produce, because you don't have to do any kind of preparation to the produce first. All right, so this is a great book, and it teaches you kind of what your different options are for how to set up a root cellar. Can be super small, can be just like a bin in your garage, or it can be something much more elaborate, but they go into everything that you need to know about how to cellar your vegetables properly so that they will last the longest. And then again, bonus content. All right, so This one is called Smart Soap Making by Ann Watson. Um, and I just love being able to know and learn how to make stuff myself. Um, and there's lots of other soap making books out there that have more beautiful pictures. But again, this one gets into kind of how to calculate the proper ratio of fats to your lye, so that that way you can make soap with whatever kind of fat you have available, whether you just have lard, whether you have olive oil or some kind of vegetable oil. She tells you how to make the calculations and do it yourself. Now, there are also recipes in here which are excellent. So it's a very, very kind of basic, this is the way you do it, no nonsense kind of book, but it works and it's great. I find, I mean, we're in the winter time here, and I find that this is the perfect time for me to be getting down to some reading and to kind of dream and learn and think about what it is that I want to do for the next year. And it's just so nice, and it's such a great way to spend time in the winter. All right, or any time for that matter. So if you're looking for some gifts for anybody who's kind of a gardener or homesteader, any of these would be great. All right, everybody. If you like this episode, please feel free to press the subscribe button as well as the notification bell. And we'll see you again soon. All right, take care. Bye-bye.